Welcome into another episode of the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored by Bet Rivers Sportsbook. That is my guy, Christian Hackenberg, former Penn State quarterback. I'm merely Joshua Perry. A little bit slow moving this morning. I had you waiting on me, so I apologize for that. But nonetheless, we will get into some football. Wasn't necessarily the most exciting weekend in the Big Ten. Were some fun games for sure. And one big one that we got to highlight from last week, and then we'll get into a couple of matchups this week that I think will tell us a lot about the season. But recapping some scores here from Friday night, Nebraska beat Rutgers on the road 14-13. Michigan 31-10 over Indiana, got off to a slow start, but they were dominant in the second half of that game. One of the more interesting ones, Purdue 31, Maryland 29. A little controversy in there. Maryland kind of doing the Terps versus Terps thing that they've done in the past. Purdue coming up with the plays they needed to win. Wisconsin blew Northwestern out of the water 42-7. Northwestern is just a miserable football team at this juncture.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get back on track here. Ohio State 49, Michigan State 20, and that game really wasn't as close as what the score actually says.
Yep.
And then the nightcap, and the one that I think most of us were intrigued by, in statement for Illinois 9, Iowa 6. We got to recap that one. I need to hear your thoughts on it. Minnesota, Penn State were idle last week, but Illinois is now ranked in the AP top 25 for the first time since 2011. After they beat Iowa, they've got the best scoring defense in the nation right now. Iowa, offensively, we have talked about the troubles that they've had this year, but their defense is really good. And Tommy DeVito went out of that game pretty early. Isaiah Williams was a little busted up during that game. And Illinois was able to really lean on Chase Brown and get the victory. What were your biggest takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I think just that. You know, when you talk about a good football team, they're able to adapt and overcome adversity and certain circumstances that may get thrown their way that they haven't expected, right? I think when you look at Illinois in the past, these types of gut punches or body blows would derail them. I think that a lot of that testament needs to go to how they're coached, the expectation that Bielema and his staff has of these guys on a consistent basis shows. And I think year two, you're really starting to see it with the way that they play and the way that they approach the game. And like I said, I just think ultimately this is a game that DeVito goes down, have a hard time getting things going. Historically speaking, Illinois loses this game, and probably in a very dramatic fashion. And they stuck it out and they fought and they beat an Iowa team, granted, who I don't think can get out of their own way offensively and will not be able to for the rest of the year. But defensively is a very good opponent, and Jack Campbell's got that side of the ball rolling. So, I think that's a good program win for them.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And it's not just that Illinois historically loses a game like that, because I think you're right. I think most teams probably lose a game like that just because of the way that Iowa likes to make these games really just, you have to grind them out. You got to really earn it. Mm-hmm. And so for Illinois, I think it is a testament to their culture and the way that they're being coached right now. Brett Bielema's got a tough-ass team that leans into the run game, even though their offense is more wide open than it's been in a while. They lean into the run game. And like I said, Iowa offensively is not challenged, but that defense is really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. There were multiple times that Iowa had the football in position to score touchdowns. They recover a muff punt. And for most teams on a sudden change situation in a short field, you're giving up a touchdown. And they hold Iowa to a field goal. Iowa gets the football on the 5 freaking yard line. And the first thing that pops into my mind is, what yard line are they kicking the field goal from? partly because Iowa's offense struggles that much, and partially because Illinois has a defense that's that good. Iowa went backward on that drive. Those are the moments to me that really stand out about this Illinois team and the resolve that they have, the toughness, the culture, the way that they bow up, how physical they can be at the point of attack. To say from the 5-yard line, the fact that they're not going to give an inch, but they're actually going to make you go the other way.
They're going to take some.
Boy,
they're going to take some back.
Crazy, man. It's wild.
I agree with you. And I think that that's something that you can build a team on. And I think offensively, they're really a couple pieces away too. I think they're a difference maker outside. And I think DeVito's a good enough quarterback, but I think you could still find an upgrade out there, not to take anything away from the kid at some point in time. So that's a great foundational side of the ball to build off of to me. If you can keep the defense hot and running, they're going to keep you in every football game. And then that gives you time. And this is more like big picture talk 2, 3, 4 years down the road if Bielema is still there. I think that's a focus for him and a positive in Illinois' favor.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think even like short term, looking maybe next year, 2 years from now, I say this seems like every show, but Brett Bielema, they paid Ryan Walters $1.2 million in the offseason to keep him as the defensive coordinator. And this guy is going to be getting phone calls from everybody, including probably Colorado, where he played ball. And I don't think he should take that job. I think it's a very difficult spot, but he's going to be fielding phone calls. And now for Brett, it's about what's your coaching pipeline look like, or what guys on your staff have you developed? Because, Ryan Walters seems like he's irreplaceable at this point. And Brett is he's known for his defenses. And he is, I think, a more humble coach at this juncture than to say that he's the secret sauce rather than the guy who everybody can point to that says it's working. So I know he's probably thinking about that process, but that's going to be huge. I think this program can really build into something because of the structures that they have right now.
No doubt.
All right, let's get to some storylines and just talked about this battle that happened in the West. And I think it clarified for us a couple of things, that Iowa is a dog this year, but also that Illinois is a contender that we probably thought they were. But as you took in some of the games and we saw that Wisconsin's kind of on this roller coaster and, Northwestern, bad ball. Is the West picture any clearer to you this week than it was a week ago?
Nah, not at all. I mean, I think Illinois is obviously playing really well. Minnesota was off, if I remember correctly, which they needed. Purdue does what Purdue does. They start beating teams that they shouldn't beat all of a sudden after losing games they should have lost. They should have never
me on
lost.
An emotional ride is what they do,
bro. Tell me about it. And like I said, I've been attached to the hip to this Aiden O'Connell kid for going back to the offseason. So
it's funny, dude, how we kind of like, we pick our guys and we go all in on them. And, whether it's because we think they're great players or we think they got some quality that we just really like. And then you get halfway through the season and you're like, well, I'm in on the kid. Like I can't abandon him now. Like as if it's a personal relationship we built.
And he hasn't let me down. He hasn't let me down. He's been playing well for the most part. I mean, hell, the worst game he played, they won. And that's the hard part about it is I'm sitting there like, Jesus, dude. So I think it's more so of the big picture of Purdue. But I think we'll find out a lot, coming up this week. Nebraska's gotten aggressive and hot. Like you said, Wisconsin comes out and hangs 49 on somebody. I can't remember the last time they scored 49 points.
Yeah, swear to God.
So, even though that was a really bad Northwestern team, it's just it's for lack of a better term, it's just a cluster.
Yeah, buddy.
We need some more clarity, but I think like the top 3 players that we've identified in Minnesota, now Illinois, and Purdue, I think still kind of can control it. Just because of the way that they're built, in my opinion.
What's wild to me, and this is not to punch down and to harp on it, but have you watched Northwestern that closely? I mean, there's not a reason why you would, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, nah, I haven't. I mean,
from a basic like peewee football standpoint, I mean they can't even fit up power. Like they can't fit up the run. Like just basic gap fits.
And that's crazy because even, I mean, just reflecting back to when I was playing and how Fitz got that team ready to play, even if they weren't talented, which
yes.
they oftentimes have a really tough time fielding depth from a talent standpoint. They still came out, played hard, played sound, and knew what they were doing.
Yep.
So I'll have to pay attention to that because that's a shock. That's a shame to me.
It is shocking.
I've had a ton of respect for how he's been able to win up there, even though it's been cyclical. Too. It's a tough spot to win, and I've always had a ton of personal respect for him.
Yep.
So
I'm with you there. I think the world of Fitz personally, like he recruited me. I've got nothing but respect. One of my best friends from high school played at Northwestern, so we always kept in touch in high school or in college. And he had nothing but great things to say about Fitz. You're right. It was a developmental program, but the guys were always ready to go. They played smart, disciplined football. They were always sound. If it was one thing they were going to be, it was sound. I remember freaking 2013, man, my sophomore year, we went to Evanston and that was game day. We played them at night. And it was one of those bad beats if you're a better. But like that was a tough game for us. Like that's what I expect from Northwestern is like they might not win the game, but they're going to put up a hell of a fight. And it is woof, man. Like these cats don't even look like they're playing hard. And it's not an indictment on the players necessarily. I don't think they have very much clarity on the defensive side of the ball. Right. But getting back to the West, the one thing I will say, cluster, you're spot on with that, is Nebraska now starting to creep back into the conversation. And I know we got to pump the brakes a little bit, and it was Indiana and Rutgers, but those are two crossover wins. You beat a couple teams out of the East. You need to do that. If you're in the West, you need to get your crossovers, right? So they got those two under their belt. Their defense is way better than it was before. Bill Bush is their interim defensive coordinator. Mickey Joseph got rid of Eric Shenander. And I know Bill Bush personally. I think the world of that guy just in terms of X's and O's. And he basically said, listen, dude, we're making it simple. And they have. And they can make adjustments now. And they have. I mean, are they starting to creep back into the convo of a team that's going to be, a little dark horse over there in the West?
Well, we've talked about it. I just still think that offensively they shoot themselves in the foot too many times and they put themselves in compromising situations. And the fact that you have a Rutgers team who is another team that is super frustrating to watch offensively and defensively is a very sound football team. They're just as good as any of the previous mentioned teams that we've talked about up until this point. I think that they're just as sound and fly around and play with passion and heart, same exact way, and present the same problems. But they hand you the ball 3 times from the quarterback position. I didn't really tune into the game a ton, so maybe a few more turnovers there. You gotta do more than score 14 with it. If you're gonna be a team that's turning the corner, I don't know. I just think that there's so much turmoil over there. Maybe. I mean, I would I love for it to happen 100% because again, like I think a strong Nebraska would be good for the conference. But I just don't know, man. I think that there's too much scar tissue built up there right now.
Breaking news. The Field of 68 has an online store, and it's your one-stop shop for the latest and greatest merch in college basketball and college football. You can find shirts to support your favorite team, make fun of your rival team, or boast Field of 68 catchphrases like Daddy Brad, Cussin' and Discussin', and the Star Heels. Go to www.fieldof68.shop today and enter promo code TOUCHDOWN for 20% off at checkout.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't know. You look at it from the offense's perspective of you give the football away too many times, which I don't disagree with, but Rutgers got out to a huge lead in that game. The defense said no mas. And I know that Rutgers offense is in disarray and they fired their coordinator. So again, you take it with a grain of salt, but just something to me about the difference in the mentality of this team. They were on the road. They won in a 1-score game. And they were down big. They could have just packed it in. Mickey Joseph said, we're not going to do that. Bill Bush said, hey, with defense, we got to keep our guys in the game, and they did. So
I will say that team,
playing devil's advocate.
I will say that team did. I mean, even with Scott Frost last year, they never quit on them. They got that in their DNA.
Yeah.
They have that in their DNA.
Yes, they never quit. They played hard finding ways to lose.
Yeah, man.
And now they're playing hard finding ways to win.
Right. So, hey, who the hell knows? Because we talked about it. It's a talented roster. I mean, not the most talented roster, but it's a talented roster, enough to win 6-7 games.
Dude, it's funny, though, because when you talk to Nebraska fans, they will act like there is no talent on that roster, which I take exception to because some of the body types that I see in Nebraska mirror the body types that I would see at Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. Not all of them, but more than some of the other teams.
A lot more than the other teams in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the running backs, they got some wide receivers that can really roll. Their quarterback is risky with the football, but I like his moxie, and he's a great athlete. Their tight ends, those guys are freaking trees. They're like 6'7". I mean, they got some guys out there now. And you said the thing that is, I think, key, and we might as well talk about it right now.
Yeah.
If they win 6 or 7 games this year, do you keep Mickey Joseph, or are you out there trying to get the splash guy and you're going to spend the money and go get maybe somebody who's got a little bit more of a track record somewhere else?
Well, it's really interesting. I'm happy I'm not the guy making that decision.
Me too.
But I think a lot of it still is yet to be told, and a lot of it's still yet to be seen. Mickey's got some good recruiting ties in some areas where I think that they need to win.
Louisiana.
Yep. More consistently down south. Because you're not, you're not pulling talent from. You draw a 500-mile circle around campus. Like, I don't think you're pulling much talent from that area. You gotta move, man. You got a couple plane flights out. So I think that's going to be really important. And then I think he's got to do a damn good job in the portal this offseason as well. And that's obviously a ton of conversation, but I think you really just need to have those types of conversations. And fortunately, he's in a position where he gets to prove himself and prove his worth. And it's going to be, to me, it's going to come down to, you know what you got in this?
Yep.
Do you want to try to experiment again? It's kind of like, do you like, how do you, one in the hand's worth 2 in the bush type of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think you might know, I think for Nebraska, some stability and some positive energy moving forward would be a good thing if they can, if Mickey can get the thing rattled off here in the back half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be probably half the fan base that says we need to go out and get a proven guy. There's going to be the other half the fan base that says, listen, I know it didn't work with Scott, but Mickey's one of our own, and he got this thing turned around in a bad situation if that's what he does. So you're right. Like, Trev Albert's got a tough decision. I like what you said about the recruiting aspect. The portal aspect becomes very unique too, because he was on he was at LSU, and I know those guys were active in the portal. So he's probably got a little bit of a blueprint and a map for how you get guys out of there. But certainly it's a spot that expects a ton out of whoever's going to be their head guy. So looking at Michigan's performance over the weekend, and they're one of the teams that I think we can say is a consistent, complete football team. They were iffy in the first half against Indiana. It was kind of one of those slow rolling games. You're playing at noon again, and you got Penn State coming up the week after, and Indiana is always going to give you their best shot coming out the gates. And then the second half, they turn around, offense really clicking. Defense gave up 29 yards in the whole second half. I think they might have had like 7 TFLs in the second half of that game.
Yeah.
I mean, how have they built this defense to a place where you feel like they are as productive as they were a year ago with Aiden Hutchinson, second overall pick, David Ojabo, who'd have been a first rounder had he not gotten hurt, Dax Hill, who was a first round pick? Like, how are they doing this right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you talked about it kind of with your last answer when you talk about, the body types and the frames that you have at places like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, comparatively to everybody else in the conference. And when you do what I think Michigan did last year from an identity standpoint, defensively, offensively, and that's more of a scheme side of things. You may not know the names yet, but the people are going to step in and execute because everyone's pulling the chain in the same direction. And to me, that's kind of what you're seeing defensively. They had a great example set last year with some really big names and developed older talent. But again, the privilege you have at a place like Michigan, Ohio State is you get to rinse and repeat, replace, reload very, very quickly. I think they've done that. I think they've put guys in positions to be successful. They fly around, they play sound, they know what they're doing, they know what they're being asked to do, and they know why they're being asked to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have all those things working for you, it's really hard to be beat when you have talent as well, and they do. So they've turned the switch. Offensively, we'll get on that, but I want to hear your take on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, the defense to me, I agree with you got bodies you can roll back through. I think they shifted their mentality though, and this comes from years of building into being able to do this. But they basically said, "Listen, guys, like we don't have the get out of jail free card anymore with a couple of elite guys that can just bail us out, and we need big plays. Like we are going to have to do this as a team. We are going to have to find the plays that we need to win." And their guys took that to heart, and they said, "All right, well, if that's how we really feel, and if it's not going to be just a couple of guys sitting there, we are going to actively pursue the plays that we need in order to be successful."
Right.
And so I think it's been a fun journey to watch and to look at the stat sheet and to say that they had however many sacks they had in that game and they all came from different places. I think shows you that they have embraced the fact that it's going to be a true team defense this year. I also think that Jesse Minter, in his first year as defensive coordinator, has done a really good job of making adjustments. I think that he understands how to process information throughout the game flow, to communicate with his players, and then to essentially say, all right, this is what we got to do differently. And I don't know a lot of coordinators in their first year who make adjustments that well. So to me, that's a big part of it. Excited for this football team. You brought up their offense. Let you have the floor.
Yeah. I just thought, and I said this before, I said this on the After Dark show on Saturday too. I just thought that like they put training wheels on this McCarthy kid in that first half, and they took him off in the second half, and he went out and played well. But to me, if you're going to make as drastic of a decision as that from an offensive standpoint at the most important position on the field, you need to just let the kid go and play, especially with the monsters you got coming down the pipe with Penn State this weekend, because he's going to need to make more plays than he made against Indiana, against a Penn State defense and a Penn State team, all the circumstances that are going into this game. He's going to need to make more plays by himself more consistently throughout the game. To me, that growth only happens in live fire situations. And when you're playing a team like Indiana, like I'd have let him roll from the beginning. And if it's up and down, it's up and down. You're still going to figure out a way to win that football game. But I just felt like it was very conservative in the first half. And then the second half, they took it off and let him go, took the training wheels off and let him go. And I think he needs that. And it's not a shot at the kid, really not even a shot at the coaching staff. I just think that they're trying to make a decision as to how they want to best protect him, protect their decision, and make it all look fine and dandy on the surface level. But for me, again, if you make a decision like that, I don't care how it looks. I make a decision with conviction, and I know the kid's talented, and I'm going to put him in situations that are going to challenge him, and I'm also going to put him in situations that are going to be high rates of success for him, right?
Yeah.
And then you grow. That's kind of just speaking from my personal experience, getting thrown into the fire at 18 years old. Like my growth, the way it went, I don't think it would have gone the same way if O'Brien hadn't been so like, just go ahead, man. Like, don't dip your toe in the water, jump in that son of a gun and let it fly. And, just for JJ, I think that would be really refreshing And if they back that up by play calling and how they put him in situations, I think that would be really good for him. Because he is such a dynamic player, such a dynamic athlete. There's a lot he can do. And I think he can really open that offense up for him.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and it needs to be the full complement of JJ McCarthy. So you're opening his arm up, which we know the arm talent exists there. I think we are also opening this run game up too. I think a lot has been on the shoulders of Blake Corum, and he's done a really good job with it. But when you have a guy who is a true runner at quarterback, I don't know why you wouldn't add that extra element in there just to even open up the downhill run game a little bit more.
The other thing is it doesn't have to be that much either.
No, a couple times a quarter.
5-6 times a game, right?
Yeah,
7 times a game.
Defenses are literally on their heels at that point. I think that's been my biggest thing with this Michigan offense is what their progression is truly going to be. And it seems like they are comfortable just like trudging along with their typical Michigan type game plan. It feels like vintage Harbaugh. But I think there's a lot more left in the tank. Got a couple more topics before we get into some previews, but big topic conversation nationally with Alabama having a sloppy game. Bryce Young wasn't playing, but
yeah,
I think a lot of people were down on them after their game against Texas, and then against A&M's, they're down again. They got Tennessee coming up, which would be a big test for both those teams. Fun game nationally, but Ohio State, I believe, got more first-place votes than they've had all season. And a lot of national media are saying that the AP voters got it wrong, and Ohio State is the best team to them at the moment. I watch some national games. I can't say that I watch every game that's involving Alabama and Georgia, but I will say that watching this Ohio State team as closely as I do, they had the first game against Notre Dame, which was a out-of-character game offensively. They lost Jackson Smith and Jigba in that game, so it took them out of their game plan, not to make an excuse because Ryan Day is a great offensive mind who should be able to adapt. But their defense really bowed up. And looking at Notre Dame right now, they've won 3 in a row, had the win against BYU, so it seems like things are turning around for them. And then it's just been fireworks on offense. They've got a top 10 total defense. I think they're top 15 in the country in scoring defense right now. Georgia had kind of a sleepy game against Kent State, and then Missouri took them to the wire. Probably should have won that football game. Do you think Ohio State is the best team in the country?
I'm not going to throw all that out there. What I will say is, and I've said this in the past, I think this is Ohio State's year to win it. For Ryan Day, get the first one under his belt. If they're going to win it any year, this is the year because of all the things that you mentioned about Georgia and Alabama. I think Alabama is much more gettable this year than they have been in the past. I still think Georgia's a really good football team. And I think that they're probably going to be the toughest challenge if you were to line these teams up and just let them go play. It's hard for me to say this, but I think Georgia's going to be more of a challenge for Ohio State than Alabama would be. But I do think that the way that this offense is constructed, it's kind of, to me, Ohio State is the best of both worlds in terms of what we see out there, right? Like right now, we're probably looking at Lincoln Riley out at USC as the high-powered offense that's ripping and roaring, right? Obviously, people say Ryan Day still got that. Yes, 100%. But they have that, right? Comparable, if not better, in my opinion. And then they also have a defense to back that up where USC lacks that. So they dip into like the SEC and the Pac-12, and that's the Big Ten coming together with their juggernaut, right? They have the physicality at the lines of scrimmage. And that's why I think Ohio State this year has been the year to me closest to the year that you guys got it done, where you can say, okay, like these guys are gettable. Like 100% preseason, and every year, every team thinks that, but just from a different perspective now, outside of a locker room, just watching the teams play, I think this could be Ohio State's year.
Yeah, I think so too. And for me, like, do I think Ohio State is the best team in the country? I can make the argument, but being realistic, have they actually been challenged this year? Like they're the big games that Ohio State was supposed to have through the halfway point of the year. Notre Dame, they are not what they were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin is not what they were supposed to be. Michigan State, not what they were supposed to be. That's not Ohio State's fault. They've done what they were supposed to do, but I don't think that they've been challenged yet to a point where I can say, okay, they've proven to me that all of the things that we believe are true right now hold up against really good competition. You still got Penn State out there, Michigan's out there, Maryland, we know can challenge teams. But outside of that, to me, like, I'd love to go out on a limb and say yes, but I'd still want that data point against a really good football team to be like, we have seen it.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, and I want your opinion on this as well, because this is a really strong take of mine for college football fans out there. But I think when you cut through all the bullshit and all the fluff, like Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, you could probably at one point in time have made the argument for Clemson. At any point in time, those four programs, from a talent standpoint, roll them out there, coaching staff standpoint, who they have, you put them out there, they're all gonna go 500 against each other. But yeah. I mean, it's gonna be who's hot, who's playing with more confidence, momentum of the game. There's just who's gonna make a better decision from a coaching standpoint. There's just so many like finite points. It's not gonna come down to like, oh, this guy's that much better than that guy, or we just roll these guys out here and let them play. Like, it would really be like some really fun street ball type situation. If you get these four teams together and just let them play for a season, you'd see a lot of just, I think, really good football, really good coaching. And that's why it's like hard for me to ever say like, oh, this team's better than that team. Like, I'd almost, again, going back to my pod guy stance, like I'm a pod guy. I think that pod of college football programs and coaches put themselves in a situation where in any given year, in any given week, they could go out and beat one another. It's just going to really come down to who's playing with more confidence and more of the intangibles rather than the X's and O's and the Jimmies and Joes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think that's why many years ago there was an appetite for a college football playoff. And I think that's why a lot of people also want to see expansion, because we know the top three teams. And I agree with you, if we're going to put them in pods like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, you throw them right in that first pod. And it's probably, depending on the day, who's going to be successful. With you on that. And then there's another pod right behind them that I think is pretty deep, where you throw in Michigan and Clemson, you throw in USC, you throw in Penn State, you throw in Oklahoma State. Like I'm there with you. And so yes, like right now, would I love to be definitive about who the best team in the country is? Absolutely. Does it actually matter at this juncture? No, because they're gonna have to go out and win the rest of their games, and they're gonna have to compete at the highest level at the end of the year.
And that's my point moving forward too, though, Josh, is that like, I don't know why we waste time and waste breath on figuring out who is. Like, we know who's,
because we're media people.
Yeah, 100%. But who's built to do it? And Ohio State's 1,000% built to do it. Same with Georgia, same with Alabama. And to your point, the best part about it is we're going to find out.
Yes, we will. Absolutely will. All right, I'm gonna leave this last topic out. We'll hit it next week. Evergreen, love that. Get to some previews though, because that's what the people came here for. Betting lines provided by Bet Rivers Sportsbook. The big one, Big Noon, Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt. We got Penn State at Michigan. Michigan is favored by a whole touchdown. Over under 52.5. I will let the resident Penn State guy take the floor.
I think for Penn State, the timing couldn't be better. Coming off a bye week, get a little bit of extra preparation, get some fresh legs going. I've been really, really impressed with their defense.
I have too. I don't think people are talking enough about them.
They've been playing, I mean, fantastic football. And the group that I was going to give a lot of credit to in this previous section that we actually skipped was their defensive backfield. I think their defensive backfield may be one of the strongest in the country.
I totally agree with that. I don't think people are talking enough about them.
Correct.
It is so good. I'm not trying to cut you off here.
No, you're fine.
Heck, they are phenomenal. These guys are so freaking good. I mean, and I mention this all the time. I'm a big body types guy. I think the teams that recruit the best understand what the profile of a high caliber athlete looks like, even if the guy isn't fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
And James Franklin has certainly identified those guys in conjunction with his defensive staff over the years. Like Joey Porter Jr., dude's built in the lab. He is long. He's fluid. His arms, he could scratch his damn ankles standing straight up. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. Jair Brown, nobody's talking about him nationally. I don't know why people aren't doing it. He's a phenomenal safety guy, can get downhill, really good in coverage. Don't even test him at this point. You got Johnny Dixon back there, who is a great player. Like, these guys are freaking phenomenal. They're built to challenge a team like Ohio State one-on-one, certainly 100%. Built to challenge Michigan's weapons, which we have seen emerge this year one-on-one, and nobody is talking about them nationally.
100%. And this is where I'm saying I think a lot's going to fall on these guys' shoulders, because to me, if they can turn a young quarterback over a couple times in some big situations, it's going to obviously help. But I think the factor that you have two safeties who are really experienced in Jair Brown and Keaton Ellis, they're going to know when they can be more aggressive in the run game, just flows, preparation, and then when they have to understand the passing situation. So when you're going against a veteran group like that, I think that they can be a big difference maker in this game. So to me, there's going to be a lot on that group, and ultimately it's going to come down to, can J.J. McCarthy grow up? Because I think I know what Penn State's going to do. They're going to come out and chip away offensively, and I don't think Cliff's going to put them in jeopardizing situations. They're going to find creative ways to get some shots. They got guys outside that can win. I think the tight end room could be a big difference maker for them this week.
Yeah.
If they can run the football the way that they've been able to run the football, and that's, to me, I've given them a ton of credit for fixing it, but I'm not quite sure exactly what the reasoning is behind it. So this will be a big test for that. If they can do it, I think this is going to be a knockdown, throw-out type of game, old school Penn State Michigan game, and I'm really excited for it. But I think the biggest difference is going to be the defensive backfield for Penn State, how they make a difference in the game in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so that's key number one, is those aliens in the back end for Penn State. I think they're going to play a huge role in this game. You mentioned the run game for Penn State. Totally agree with you on that. I am so apprehensive to say that it's what it needs to be, because I look at the teams that they played. Like the first game, everybody's kind of getting their training wheels on, so you give them the benefit of the doubt. But you play Ohio, you go to Auburn, it's a big program win, but we know Auburn isn't a great team. Like Central Michigan, the Northwestern, we know the issues that they have. And that was a sloppy game. So you kind of throw that data point out anyway. I need to see it against Michigan's front. The thing that I think Penn State has right now, and we've talked about this, is formationally how they manipulate the run game, going with nub tight ends and going with unbalanced formations. I talked about Jesse Minter and his ability to make adjustments. Huge adjustment game here, because the formation set that they're going to see is atypical of what teams typically put out there, because now you're talking about corner fits, and in unbalanced, you're talking about who the adjuster is going to be and how they fit into the run game. Do you expose yourself on the back side of that, especially if they start to get pullers over the edge, and how are your guys reading those plays and adjusting to what they do there? So that's going to be a big key. And for Michigan too, going up against Penn State's front, and as good as the back end is, the front has done a really good job of stopping the run as well. This is where J.J. McCarthy needs to be that extra piece, because you talked about the safeties and how they affect the run game. That extra piece, now you put a little more caution into the safeties in their gap fits. So it's as intriguing of a matchup that we'll see in the Big Ten all year. It's obviously a huge game, and Fox is going to blow that one out, and nationally everybody's going to be watching it. It could be one of the highest rated games of the season up to this point. But in terms of things that we learn, I am just so excited, because I think these are two good football teams, and I think both of them have things that they need to prove to us in this game.
Yep, I think we're going to learn a lot, man, and it's you hit it. So we'll see. I'm definitely fired up for it, and either way, I think both of these guys are still going to put themselves in good situations to be Titans in the East heading down the pipe, because they all got to play each other. So
no doubt. We got Minnesota favored by 6.5 at Illinois. Over under on that is 39.5, which I think is a great number, because both of these defenses to me are really good. Mo Ibrahim is expected to play. That's huge. Tommy DeVito and Isaiah Williams' status is up in the air right now. So we'll kind of track that as the week goes on. This game, to me, is for the driver's seat in the West, and I don't think there's any other way to put it. And I know Purdue is in that conversation right now, but each of these teams have a conference loss at this point. So, whoever gets the win here is going to define themselves. I think Minnesota, coming off of a bye week after a week in which they had a loss, PJ Fleck is one of the game's great adjusters, motivators, coaches. So I know he's going to have some answers for maybe what went wrong there. And as I look at this Illinois team, one of the things to me that they did well against Wisconsin, who was clearly down, is they basically said, we're going to get into a lot of single high safety coverages. We're going to play a ton of man-to-man. We'll mix in some 3-deep. And they did it. They did like a 3 invert type thing where they kept the corners hard in the boundary just in case they got the run game spilling out there. And they were dropping their safeties out into the deep zones, which was a really unique look and probably gives quarterbacks a little hesitation because you don't see it play out like that. But essentially they found creative ways to play a single high safety coverage so they could keep bodies in there for the run game. I think you do it against Mo Ibrahim. Let your secondary kind of hang out there, and they've been really good this year and challenge some throws. It's just a matter of what their offense is going to be able to do if DeVito can't go, because Art Sitkowski, as good as he was against Iowa and just kind of keeping that offense trudging along, this man is a turnover waiting to happen.
Yeah, and I don't think I just don't think if Minnesota gets hot offensively, I think they have the pieces. And again, Mo being back is massive. I think they have the pieces to score 20-something points in this game, 20 plus points in this game. I don't know if Illinois, again, looking at what they're going up against defensively from Minnesota and what they don't have on the field, has the juice to do that. And that's what it simply comes down to for me. If Mo wasn't playing just because of historical data with Minnesota, I don't know if I'd be as sure or as confident in this statement, but I do like Minnesota in this one, unfortunately for the Illini. But I do expect a really good football game. And for all the reasons you mentioned, I think defensively, Illinois is going to present some issues. It's going to come down to who can figure something out that's going to work, exploit it, and then have a couple counter punches off of it once the other team figures that out.
Yeah, it's going to be a doozy. I think this is a rock'em sock'em type game. One other one that I put on here, just because it's of interest to me this weekend, is Nebraska at Purdue. Purdue's favored by 14. Over under is 58.5. But talked about this Nebraska team maybe creeping back, and we know that Purdue rides the roller coaster a bit. Do you think that there's a chance for Purdue to mess this thing up?
Well, there's always a damn chance. When you're talking about Purdue and messing something up, there's always a chance. I don't know, man. Again, I really love the O'Connell kid. I think that matchup could be a difference in this game. If he can not turn the football over, which he's actually done at a higher clip since he's come back from that game where he didn't play, more so than I think in his entire career. But if he can take care of the football, put Purdue in positions offensively to score points, score touchdowns, not just points, finish drives. I don't know, man. I think it's going to be tough for Nebraska and Casey Thompson over there to be consistent, but they could stuff it up my ass and prove me wrong. So
pause.
We'll see. I know you're up on this Nebraska squad right now. So
I just think they're an intriguing group.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily up on them, but they feel a little dangerous right now.
Yeah, your antennas are.
They are. This is one of those where you're not overlooking them anymore. I think at the beginning of the year, it's like, oh, we got Nebraska. Fucking roll the helmets out there, baby. You got a dub. Just circle that one on the schedule and say we're up 1. And now it's kind of like, can't do that. We got to take this one seriously. I mean, Purdue is the better team, no doubt. But Nebraska, to me, just want to see what they look like.
I have a hard time saying Purdue's the better team right now because they're just like my kryptonite. Whenever I say something like that,
yep,
they they screw it up. And then whenever I'm like, oh, I'm down. You know what? Go ahead, Maryland. Go ahead. You know what, Talia, you've been showing enough for me. You've been putting it together, and then fucking here comes Purdue.
Yep.
So I don't know, man.
Yeah, that Maryland, they caught a couple bad breaks in that game, but boy, I feel like they did it to themselves again, man.
I thought they were 2 or 3 touchdowns better than Purdue. Like if they were rolling, I thought they could have scored. I thought they were 14 points better. 3 was a stretch. I thought they were 14 points better. If they're rolling, clicking, ripping, and roaring, I thought they were 2 scores better.
Yeah, it's they're a challenge for me because I love locks and I love the roster, and they get a little sideways sometimes, man.
Yeah,
that's college football for you. All right, before I get you out of here, one of my favorite hobbies in life is cooking. I am a fat boy at heart. I have struggled with my caloric intake since I stopped playing ball because I love to cook, which then, you can't let it go to waste. So I love to eat as well. Are you a guy who enjoys cooking?
I am the cook in my house, actually.
Oh,
and it goes back to, I knew that would surprise you. It goes back to, I'm a big hunter and I eat what I harvest. So
eat what you kill. Say it.
Yeah. Eat what you kill.
There you go.
But the game is really tough to cook, and you need to know what you're doing. Very, very lean meats. So, I take pride in that. And then that always crosses over. I am a cook. My wife will tell you, I love it. I do it every night. And I'm pretty damn good at it. So,
okay. So, the game to me is I'm 50-50 on it because I've had it cooked poorly so many times, but when it's done well, I think it's phenomenal.
It's you can't beat it.
No, it's so good. So, okay. So outside of things that you drag home that you've killed and you eat, what are some of your go-to dishes? Like say it's a, casual Wednesday night and you want to whip something up that's not, totally simple, but it's not a heavily involved dish.
Any type of fish I love too. I fish a lot too. So any type of fish is really good. I can do any type of like franchise, piccata.
Oh yeah.
I actually do some like homemade pasta with like a light white wine creamy sauce. I kind of like mix the two.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be 700 pounds if I didn't have good genes. Like I'd be a left tackle kick step.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I do like to eat as well. It would kind of go somewhere along that line. I love cooking steaks, like love cooking steaks, love smoking. I got a Traeger, can do barbecue the whole nine. So I get pretty lost in it. When I commit on something, I get pretty lost in it. But
so are you, you said the homemade pasta. So do you have like the KitchenAid with the attachment and you do that whole thing?
Yeah.
So that's the next thing I'm trying to add to my repertoire. I've migrated away from the box pasta at the store, and I get the freshly cut pasta that they have, but I want to start doing it myself. The steak thing is my go-to, and I've spent many a year perfecting a pan-seared, butter-basted steak.
What cut? What's your cut?
I'm a strip go-to, but I enjoy a ribeye.
You're killing me, JP. You're killing me, dude.
I'm a ribeye guy.
Okay. I'm a ribeye guy.
I'm not anti-ribeye, but the New York strip is typically the go-to for me. And I get it with, I do some mash. I steep the garlic cloves, little bit of sage and thyme in the butter, let it go for a little while. So you've got the nice infused aromatic butter that you put into the mash. Ends up being really good. I'll do some Brussels sprouts as well. Love to put the bacon in there.
And doesn't that ruin you too? Like you can't order a steak anywhere else, right?
No, I'm very picky.
I'm the same way, man. Like I go out to a restaurant, like even like a nice steakhouse. I have a hard time ordering a steak because I'm like, man, I'd rather cook it myself.
Well, it's hard to justify the price at that point because, if I can do it at home and it is as good or better than what I get in a restaurant, like why am I going to pay $65 for a cut?
Mm-hmm.
I went to a steakhouse actually a couple of weeks ago, and I was low-key pissed because I'm like, dude, I literally could have done this better on just like a random Thursday night, like not even putting that much effort into it. And it was like a nicer steakhouse. So I do that. My wife doesn't eat a ton of meats, but she is a fish eater. So I've got some recipes there. She likes salmon. We do the sea bass thing too, which is good. Really enjoyable. So I've spent a lot of time perfecting my craft, and I think what I've taken away from a lot of the conversations I've had with just guys over the cooking topic throughout the years is there's a resurgence of men who would rather do the cooking, because even as meticulous as it can be sometimes, it's very process oriented. Mm-hmm. It is a place where you can just kind of decompress, and it's nice to put your signature on the plate too. I like to take the victory lap after a good meal.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. Get lost in the sauce.
Yeah. Like figuratively and literally. How about
it? My guy.
All right. This is the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored by Bet River Sportsbook. As always, Christian Hackenberg, the most mysterious man that I know, a little bit of a Renaissance man. He's got the hunting boots, but he's also got the nice suits. I'm Joshua Perry, and we'll be back next week.